Guys, the flat 6 chord, I was excited about doing this one when I started this series. I love the flat 6 chord. It's not very common, but it does have a use in a key. So just not thinking about modulations, not thinking about moving to a different key, just in one key with the 1, the 2, 3, 4, all normal chords. The flat 6 has a place in there, and it has a great function, and we're gonna look at a few aspects of it. What is the flat 6 chord? Well, similar to the flat 7 chord we just saw, it's going to be a major chord that we build off of a note that doesn't belong to the key, the flat 6. In the key of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be there. It's an A. Flat 6 is going to be an A flat. A flat major is what I'm talking about in the key of C. Okay, so I said it had a function, a great function. That function that I'm referring to is as a chord, as part of a cadence. As part of a cadence. So flat 6 to 1 is great. It's dramatic, but it totally works. That's it. That's it. Let's look at it in a little more extensive context. Now go ahead and put your little hand in mine. 1 to 1, 7. Something to tell you. 4. I know it's gonna change your mind. Minor 4. When things go wrong. 1. So wrong with you. Major 6. Flat 6. It hurts me too. That's It Hurts Me Too by Bob Dylan from his album Self-Portrait. Now he goes to the major 6 before it, which is, that's a little jarring in and of itself because it's a major chord to the 1 just a half step below it. And all 3 notes are just being shifted down. It's a little weird, but it's one note, one chord that doesn't belong to the key to another chord that doesn't belong to the key, and yet, boom, when you go from that one to the 1, it's just like. So why does that work the way it does? Why, despite its being so weird, does it work? Well, your ear is similar to your eye in this way, in that it makes connections that you intellectually aren't necessarily making. So you ever done that thing when you're a kid and you make a little flip book and you like do maybe a stick man on page 1 and a stick man like starting to run on page 2, and on part 3 is just a little more close, it's just like when you flip through it, it looks like movement. It looks like, even though it's not, it's made up of stationary pictures. But the eye connects them, okay? Similar, your ear is going to connect chords in a chord progression. It's going to connect notes in a chord progression. Your ear is going to hear the connection between notes that you might not even know about. So that's why it makes sense to pay attention to them. So here's what I mean. We looked at the same kind of thing as we looked at in the major 6, actually the major 3 video, okay? This is a chord. It introduces 3 notes. We're not going to care about the order of those notes, and we're not going to care about like which is the first, the third, the fifth, whatever. And we're not going to care about octaves. Your ear doesn't hear octaves too well. I mean, it can tell the difference between this and this if you play them separately, but they're very similar, played at the same time. And in the context of a chord progression where there's other notes happening, your ears, there's a lot going on. So what's going to be more clear to your ear is the difference between and the connection that it draws between, say, this note and whatever the closest note to it is in the coming chord. Half step up. That's what your ear hears there, among other things. Half step down, okay? Also very tight connection. So far, these are very closely related chords. The same note. So you got one note's the same, the other 2 notes are just a half step away, and what's the one that's the same? It's the C. It's the tonic. It's the one note. So the flat 6, despite being a weird chord that doesn't belong to the key at all, happens to have the one note in it. So you can emphasize that as a great pivot kind of note. You can think of this chord as introducing 3 notes as in like that are controlled by knobs, little dials, right? You got 3 of them in a row. The middle one is going to stay the same. It's on the happens to be the tonic, and it's just going to stay there. And then the other 2 are just going to be tweaked a little bit in opposite directions. And that's going from one chord to the other. That's the whole transition. So they're very closely related in that kind of physical way. That's what I mean when I say they're closely related. And that's the tight connection that makes this work, going to the 1. It doesn't work in the sense of like, oh, it's one chord. It's like the dominant. I mean, you could think of it in a metaphorical kind of way. But again, I think it makes more sense to just abandon that and be like, it doesn't belong to the key. It's not because it's the 5 or the 4 or the flat 6. It's not because of that. It's because of the individual notes are so close. Now, similar to the minor 4, very similar to the minor 4. Let's look at the minor 4 to 1. Half step down. The same note, and it's the C again. Half step down. So the minor 4 to 1, there you've got like two dials on opposite. They're going down a half step, and the one in the middle staying the same. And the flat 6, they're going in opposite directions of a half step. And the one, so very closely related and similarly related. And that's why that's not all that different from. I mean, clearly they're distinguishable, but as we'll see, they're kind of close. But well, let's look at another song. One by Wilco, We're Just Friends. They do something interesting that you can predict if you're smart. By smart, here's what I mean. I don't mean smart as opposed to not smart. I mean, if you're thinking about every time you go to the 1, you could go to the 6. I'm talking about the regular minor 6, just like we talked about way back in the video on the 6 chord, about how you can think of it as an alternative key center that's minor. Because of that whole relative minor, relative major thing, you can land on a 6 chord, and it feels kind of settled, kind of like you're resolved, like you're home, even though you're not on the 1 chord. You are in the same key, because the key of C and the key of A minor can be indistinguishable. You can also differentiate them in a little bit, but they can be totally indistinguishable. So you can be playing in the key of C, land on the 6 chord, which is A minor, and still feel like, I'm resolved. I'm basically home. It's just that it's minor, right? So because of that reality, you can apply that to anything that's going to the 1 and like, well, let's try going to the 6 instead. We can do that here. Flat 6. Ooh, interesting. A little eerie because they're so close. But let's hear it in context. We're just friends. Over and over and over again. You say we're just friends. Forget the implications, infatuations, and if love is easy, why is it hard? I can't imagine ever being apart. Ooh, I'd come back to you. Ooh, it'd be brand new, and I promise. Anyway, it's easier to play on piano, especially that part with the But and that's the descending bass line thing that we will look at when we talk about bass lines, descending bass lines, inverted chords. That's all coming. But the thing I want to point out here is, what did they do? They went from the 1 to the flat 6 to the 6. And it had that effect that we kind of predicted, right? So no, it's not the same as going to a 1, but you're somewhere, you're kind of settled, and where you are isn't completely different from the 1. It's just like the minor aspect of the same world, the same key, right? So yeah, and it's a little bit weird, but it kind of works. So anyway, that's cool. They do another cool thing, and this is what really, when I figured out this song, it turned me on to the uses of the flat six. At the end of the song, they go, we're just friends. 1, 2, flat 6, minor 4, 1. Talk about drama. What are they doing? It's kind of like tumbling home instead of just falling straight home, right? Like, remember we talked about this before. Instead of going 5, 1, going like 5, 4, 1, right? Instead of going, but it totally works. Right, and the same thing, the reverse works as well. I did this in a song. You go minor 4, flat 6. So yeah, it's dramatic, and you're probably not going to use it in every song, but it's great to know about. It's because it's powerful and it works, and you want to know about those things. So that's flat 6, some of the uses of the flat 6. Okay, but I forgot the most common use of the flat 6, which is just to go down to the 5. Ring a bell? You've heard that before. There it is.